Do you believe that a lion could remember someone for 20 years? That out of hundreds of unfamiliar faces, it could still find the one who once held it close, when it was just a tiny, injured, trembling cub caught in a forest fire, and then one day across the wild grasslands of the Serengeti. It came back, no roaring, no hunting, just silent footsteps until it gently rested its head on the woman's shoulder, the very same woman from all those years ago, as if to say, "I remember. This isn't a fairy tale. This happened." And if you've ever loved an animal with all your heart, you'll understand why this miracle was never memories in her arms coincidence. The story began in 2005 under the scorching heat of the dry Serengeti. Rosa was a young volunteer working at a rescue camp deep inside the wildlife reserve one day. While inspecting an area recently hit by a wildfire, she heard a faint rustling sound coming from the bushes. She bent down, and there it was, a tiny creature, fear, a lion cub. Its paw was lightly burned, and its wide, tear-airy eyes looked up at her as if begging for help. Rosa didn't hesitate. She wrapped the cub in her jacket and rushed it back to camp. "I'll call you Canoe," she whispered as she gently wiped the charred dust face from that day on. Canoe grew up in Rosa's arms, drinking milk from a tiny bottle, curled up in an old blanket. Every night, he grew like an oversized kitten, playful, affectionate, and always looking for a way to nuzzle into Rosa's lap. Whenever the wind picked up one time, Rosa went out to check the station without taking Canoe with her. He waited for hours, sitting still, eyes locked on the old dirt road, and when she finally returned, Canoe ran toward her, tumbling into her arms, whimpering like a child. They were a little family. No words, presents, just love. But that happiness couldn't last forever. When Canoe turned one, Rosa received the news from the organization he had to be released into the wild. It broke her heart, but she knew deep down him on the day they said goodbye, Rosa opened the gate to the training enclosure. Canoe hesitated for a moment, then turned back to look at her, and stared for a long, long time. She knelt down and whispered, "Be strong out there. But if one day you miss your mom, you can come." And then Canoe stepped into the grass. No one knew what would happen next. 20 years passed. Rosa was now and a day of farewell, older woman, her hair silver with time, living peacefully with her daughter in a quiet coastal town. Every morning she'd sit on the front porch, a warm cup of tea in hand, gazing off into the distance. Resting on her lap was an old photograph, a young woman and a lion cub lying side by side beneath the shade of a tree. That was Canoe, the creature she had never stopped thinking about even after 20 long years. That summer, her daughter, a wildlife photographer, invited Rosa to join her and some friends on a trip to the Serengeti to film the wild ecosystem. At first, Rosa said no, but then there was something in her daughter's eyes, something unspoken, that made her say yes. They flew together to Tanzania, riding in a familiar safari truck, gliding through golden waves of grass, swaying in the wind. Their guide was a young man, knowledgeable. He told the group stories about the region's iconic wildlife, and then he paused, lingering on a name. "We have a very special lion in the Southern Reserve. His name is Canoe. He's others. He doesn't attack people." Once, he even pressed his head against a staff member's shoulder, and no one knows why Rosa's hand tightened around the edge of her seat. Her heart was pounding. She turned her face toward the window. The wind brushed against her cheek, and even she couldn't have imagined that just hours after hearing that name, Karu, from the guide's lips, she would come face to face with something she had only dared to dream of in her quietest dreams. A reunion long thought, buried beneath the dust of time, was slowly finding its way back. The safari truck slowly came to a halt in the middle of the grasslands. The sun had tilted westward, casting everything in a brilliant, fiery orange in the distance. A golden figure was approaching. It was a fully grown male lion, tall, powerful, with a thick, majestic mane. Everyone held their breath. The guide raised his hand, signaling not to move, but something was strange. The lion didn't roar, didn't growl, didn't show any signs of hunting. It just kept walking slowly, as if searching for something familiar. Rosa sat in silence, her hands clasped tightly together, eyes fixed on the creature before, and then driven by something deep. Door, Mom. Her daughter whispered, "Worried it's okay?" Rosa replied softly, "I think I know him." She stepped down the breeze, gently tugged at her shirt blades of grass, brushed her ankles like a quiet invitation. The lion stopped. Just. "Canoe!" she called, her voice trembling. He lifted his head, the entire froze, and then, in a moment, no one could explain, the lion let out a sound, not a roar, but a soft, low cry like the sob of a child. He took a few more steps and then lowered his head, gently pressing it into Rosa's shoulder. She raised her hand and laid it on the thick, familiar mane, a soft, trembling touch, as if two souls had just found each other again. Apart, the cameraman's hands shook. A few people wiped away tears. Rosa said nothing. She simply wrapped her arms around the lion's neck, and everything else fell silent. No wind, no birds, just one story. A story no one would have believed unfolding before their very eyes. The story of Rosa and Kanu's reunion spread quickly across the reserve. At first, no one believed it. Maybe it was just a coincidence, a researcher said, or the lion's instinct recognizing someone non-threatening. But then a staff member at the conservation center quietly dug through the old records, and there it was, the name Karoo, handwritten beside a note that read, "Orphaned, cared for by female volunteer Rosa." Passed, and yet this creature still remembered the woman who once held him to sleep every night, who fed him warm milk when his tiny breaths were faint and shallow. The photo of Rosa and Kanu went viral across wildlife forums. Beneath the African sunset, an elderly woman wrapped around the neck of a full-grown male lion, like a mother holding her grown son, brought millions tears. Zoologists began to analyze the case. Some said lions have long-term memory tied to scent. Others claimed they remember through emotion, not faces. But Rosa, she didn't need science. "We don't need to understand love," she said. "We just need to believe that if we give something with all our heart, somewhere, some soul will remember." Before leaving the reserve, Rosa was allowed one final afternoon with Kanu. Ska sat on a large rock, her hand resting gently on his mane, and together they watched the sun go down. He simply sat beside Kanu, as if not a single year had passed between them. The wind whispered through his mane, the golden light of dusk bathed the serenity in warmth. And then Rosa leaned in and softly whispered in his ear, "Thank you for remembering me." Even when the whole world forgot, Kanu didn't answer. He just pressed his head into her hand gently, as if to say, "I never forgot." A week later, Rosa and her daughter left the reserve. Before she went, she left behind a letter and a photo of her and Kanu, taken together beneath the African sky. At the bottom of the letter, her trembling handwriting read, "Animals don't keep photographs, but they hold on to something no picture can ever capture." Documentary about their miraculous and natural living communities around the world. No flashy edits, just a simple story that's rescued. But you'll never truly know if you remember. If you've stayed with us, we're nothing but predators driven by wilderness. There's still a heart that, after 20 years, has become a new symbol.